Welcome you all to this session of Elta. And in today's session, we are going to learn another new grammar topic called transitive and intransitive verbs. So here, let's get started. And now I cordially invite Padmavati ma'am to take over the session. Welcome ma'am and happy to see you after a long time.
Thank you, Rahul. How are you, beta?
Fine ma'am. What about you?
As of now, I am good. Let us see. Okay. So, as Rahul has already introduced, I belong to Government High School Girls Kazipet. My name is Padmavati Renikti. Okay. My designation is School Assistant English. I'm affiliated to Government High School Girls Kazipet. Now, let us really go to the what is that? The topic called transitive and what is that? Intransitive verbs. So generally, I do not know whether what was the previous knowledge of. Are you able to hear me, students? Hello. Hello. Hello.
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Whenever I'm not audible, please try to either call or keep it in the chat box. Okay, so transitive and intransitive verbs, there are many classifications of verbs. So, and one of the classification of the verbs is transitive and intransitive verbs. Previous classes, when you have learnt about tenses, you might have learnt about V1, V2, V3 and V4 verbs. Okay, V1 is a present base form of the verb, then V2 is past form of the verb, and V3 is present participle, V4 is, V3 is past part and V4 is present participle. So like this, ing form and ed form as past participle, like this we have many number of, that is one classification. Okay, there is another classification of verbs, we call it as transitive and intransitive verbs. So why this knowledge of transitive and intransitive verbs is necessary for all of us is a point. Okay, transitive verbs and intransitive verbs knowledge talks about, actually we take these verbs into consideration in what is called as active voice and passive voice. Now, why the what is that? What is the importance of active and passive voice? See, sometimes you give importance to the doer of the action. Sometimes you give importance to the victim of the action. For example, students, sir, is my voice not only audible? Is it clear, or am I very fast? Hello. Hello.
Ma'am, you are audible.
Yeah, not audible. I'm talking about whether it is clear. I'm very fast. You want?
No, ma'am, it is clear.
It is clear. Okay, thank you then. So this is what I would like to tell you all is, so there are many classification of verbs. We were talking about transitive and intransitive verbs. Earlier, when tense aspect was taken by any of either of the teachers on this platform, they might have given you knowledge about V1, V2, V3 and V4 verbs. V1 base form, V2 is what is that past form of the verb, V3 is past participle and V4 is present participle. Like this, we were talking about that kind of verbs. And there could be another classification of verbs called as main verbs and auxiliary verbs. So generally, what are main verbs? Generally, the lexical verbs are called as main verbs, which pronounce about the main action of a word. That is called as what is called main verb or a lexical verb. And auxiliary verbs are generally called as helping verbs, is, are, was, were, like that. In that also we can divide them into what is that modal auxiliaries and primary auxiliaries. Okay, under modal auxiliaries we talk about can, could, may, might, shall, should, will, would, like that. And when we talk about primary auxiliaries, we talk about be forms, is, are, was, were, been, being, all these come under be forms. And do forms, do, does, doing, done, did. Have forms, have, has, having, and had. So like this we divide. That is another classification of verbs, friends. And there is another classification. What I would like to tell you all today is the verbs can be classified into what is that? Right. Now these verbs can be classified into finite verbs and non-finite verbs. And now in every slide I'll tell you what is a finite verb and what is a non-finite verb, because we today talk about finite verbs. And in this finite verbs, we talk about what is that called as transitive and intransitive verbs. So we these verbs can be classified. Another classification, what I told you in my introduction of my presentation was about another classification of verbs where we take time and tense into consideration. Now, what I'm talking about is active voice and passive voice. This is another classification of verbs. So these can be divided as finite verbs and non-finite verbs. Okay. Now, are you able to see my screen, sir?
Yeah, ma'am, it's visible.
Yeah, thank you. What is a finite verb? Right, finite verb indicates tense. They change according to the subject, person, and number. The subject of the sentence, sentence has to agree with the verb. So let me now, friends, explain you the meaning of this sentence, what I am presenting on my screen. So what is a finite verb? Finite verb indicates tense. Tense takes two things into, in tenses lesson also, our friends might have told you, tense takes two parts into consideration. One is called time and the other is called action. So finite verbs indicates tense, and tense takes two words into consideration. One is called time and one is called action. Action is nothing but the verb which we take, and time, at what time the action is performed. So tense is one which takes two words into consideration. One is time and one is action. So they change. Now these finite verbs change according to the subject or the person. Now, what is subject and person? Person is first person and second person. When I talk about myself, I'm calling it as first person. When I talk about a person who is in front of me, I call it as second person. When I talk about a person who is not at all in our what is that, in front of me, or I'm not talking about myself, I'm talking about somebody else, then I call it as third person. And the number, what is number? Number here is not 1 2 3, it is singular and plural. More than one identity or one subject or one what is that, group, then we call it as number. So the verb has to the verb has to agree with the subject and verb should have some kind of concord. What is concord? They should have some kind of matching relationship. Subject and the verb should have matching relationship. The subject of the sentence has to agree with the verb. So what is subject here? As I told you, once again, I try to underline, either it should be the person, it should be the subject, or the number. That's it. All this comes under the subject of the sentence. This subject has to agree with the verb. What is the verb here? Likes, like. I underlined and made it bold, friends. That is one. So first of all, when I talk about third person, I'm saying he likes chocolates. Yes. And second one, I like chocolates. Are you able to, this is out of the box word sentence. What I would like to tell you is, are you all able to see my screen and observe the spelling of chocolates? Usually I find my children generally missing O after C, CHOCLATES, they generally write. So that's the reason why I just wanted to, out of the box sentence it is, idea it is. So spelling, we need to look at it. As far as language is concerned, our spelling, our intonation, our pronunciation, our grammar, all these form, what is that? Our language. So I would like to tell you all that that is the spelling of chocolates. So now let us come to our topic now, finite verbs. He likes chocolates. Whenever I'm writing he as a third person, as you all know, he is matching with a word called as likes. And when I write about myself, I am using the verb called as like. Okay, and in the third person again, THEY, they, plural of, that is called number, plural of third person. Whenever I'm using what is called they like chocolates. They like chocolates. So he likes chocolates, I like chocolates, they like chocolate. The verb called like differs, what is that, in its form, when we are using he, when we are using I, whenever we are using they. So whenever what is that, the subject is changing, the verb is also changing its form. That's what I told you, friends. Finite verb indicates what is that called as tense. They change according to the subject and number. So you see here number. Whenever I'm using he, I use it the verb called as likes, and whenever I use it they, I use it the word called as like, and whenever I used I used the word called as like. See, the verb form is changing. It is matching with the subject. So when third person, I'm making use of likes. First person, I'm making use of like again. They again, I'm making use of like. So you can understand how what I mean to say, that is there is a matching agreement between the verb and the subject, and the verb which makes an agreement, matching agreement with the subject, we call this verb as finite verb. Finite verb. You can take the screenshot in your mobiles also. This finite verb is very, 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 very important. Okay, generally whenever you write discourses, you make what is that, generally I find errors in using the what is called as finite verb. So he likes chocolates, I like chocolates, they like chocolates. So the verb is changing its form, likes, like, and like. So the verb, whichever, like is a verb here, which is made in bold and underline, and the verb whichever agrees with what is that called as subject, then we call it as what is that, we call that verb as a finite verb. Even if you don't remember what the spelling called or the word called finite verb, but the usage of the verb should be correct. So he likes chocolate, I like chocolate, they like chocolates. So this way you have to change. Yes, can anybody give me one example with any other verb with the same, you just change the verb. Anyone in the class? Say, change the verb. Yes, anyone? Rahul, you please call either of the students to respond. Generally, I do not know the names of the students.
Okay, ma'am. Guys, if you would like to answer the question, you may raise your hand, then we could unmute you.
I'll give you one more example. He loves movies. I love watching movies. They love watching movies. Simple.
Ma'am, we are getting the answers from the chat box.
Okay. Why can't they speak so that everybody will listen? Whoever raises hand, ask them to unmute and speak. Archana, I think. Somebody wrote Ranadir. He eats cake. Okay. I am Archana. They plays cricket. Okay. Archana and or anybody else. Can you unmute yourself and say what is the mistake there? Please look at the example and see your example. And Samhita, Sai Samhita, she wrote, what is that? What is that? I want to go to shop. That is Shavani. Sai, he writes homework. Okay, she plays chess. Snehita. Very good. M. Archana, she wrote, I like to become a doctor. Okay. Okay. So he writes homework. Okay, good. I want to go to shop. I will talk about that one later. She plays chess is correct. I like to become a doctor also. I would like to. They plays cricket. Is there any mistake or the sentence is right?
They play cricket.
Very good. Very good. Very good. So who is that who spoke just now?
Sai Nikshit, ma'am.
Sai.
Nikshit.
Very good. Sai Nikshit said they play cricket. So Sai Nikshit, he made an agreement with the subject. Play should match with a word called as they. They play cricket. Okay. He plays chess. Okay. She plays chess. Okay. Next. I want. Instead of that, can anybody tell one sentence? With he and they, you could make good sentences. With I want. Yes, in the chat box. Yeah, I play chess. Yes. And somebody wrote they eat cake. Okay. This V Uma, ZPHS girls, Ramanna Pet. What is your doubt, Nana? No, no, ma'am. Okay. Right. So now all of you got the idea of finite verbs, I believe. You can, in your notebooks, I do not know whether you maintain any notebook or not. In your notebooks, you can write your own example. You can write.
Hello friends, I'll join. My battery became low. 1 or 2 minutes I'll take to join. Please don't go away from the meeting. 1 minute, I'll join. Right.
Okay,
I
ma'am.
want to become a teacher. He wants to become a teacher. They want to become. Why these two become? Without two become, make a sentence. Yeah. He, somebody wrote he love ice cream. Is he love ice cream correct, friends? Who is that who wrote? No. Yes, very good. He, what is the correction now? He loves ice cream. Hanshita. Right. She waters the plants. Very good. He loves ice cream. Very good. P. Archana. Yes. So now you could understand what is the meaning, what is the difference between, what is that? She makes cake. Okay. She makes cakes. Why not like that? Any problem with that? He loves to play kabaddi or kanandi. I don't know what is that word. She reads not book. You either write a book. She reads books. He looks good. Very good. I play cricket. Okay. I play football. Right. Are you able to see my screen now?
No, ma'am, it's not visible. Hello?
Yes, sir.
What
Door as a compliment. Only football is there. Yes, and in one, the reading room is there. So I gave you different kinds of objects for the same purpose, not to get confused, to expose you to different kinds of objects in different varieties of sentences. Okay, the verbs that need objects are known as transitive verbs. Chitty closed the door. Closed becomes a verb and the door becomes the object. The doctor visits the patients every day. Patients becomes the object. We play football or we watch football. Football becomes the object. He cleaned the reading room. Reading room becomes the object. Now, friends, what I would like to tell you all is closed is followed by an object called door. Visits is followed by an object called patients. Play or watch is followed by an object called football. Cleaned is followed by an object called reading room. So all these tell you whenever a verb is followed by an object, we call it as, what is that, Nana? Transitive verb. That verb we call it as transitive verb. And remember, friends, whenever there is a transitive verb in a sentence, the sentence can be changed from active voice to passive voice, vice versa. That means passive to active also. Active to passive or passive to active can be changed. That sentence, that transitive verb facilitates the change of voice. Okay, friends, that's the reason why the knowledge of transitive verbs is necessary before we proceed to the chapter called voice. Right. Now let us take what is that? Monotransitive verb. Mono in general is what, Nana? Mono action, mono.
Single.
Very
Single.
good. So mono means single. What is di, Nana?
Double.
Ma'am, two.
Then one.
Ma'am.
Die, by means two. Okay, monotransitive verb. All the examples are followed by a single object, hence are called monotransitive. Which examples, Nana, you see? Chitty closed the door. There is only one object. Okay, the doctor visits the patients. There is only one object. We play or we watch football. There is only one object. He cleaned the reading room. Reading room is only the object. So since all these examples have only one object, we call these verbs as, what is that? Monotransitive verbs. That means, friends, what I would like to underline or conclude here is the verbs which are followed by a single object are called as monotransitive verbs. Can anybody tell me what is a monotransitive verb, Amma? Look at the screen.
Examples that are followed by a single object.
Yeah, examples means sentences.
Sentences.
Which are followed by a
Single object.
single object. They are called, what is that?
Monotransitive verbs.
Verbs. Right, Nana, right. Next. Now you see here, verbs. Which verbs? Transitive verbs only. Means you should always think transitive ante last ki naku oka object ostadani gurtupeట్టుకోవాలి. Object ni identify చేయగలగాలి. Object ni identify చేశారు అంటే that a verb is a transitive verb. When there is no object, there is no question of calling it as transitive verb. It becomes intransitive verb. Okay, we'll talk about intransitive later. Right, verbs. Now, this transitive verb requires two objects. That means verbs require two objects. They are called direct object and indirect object. Now, I have written my, you see the sentence here. He cleaned, first time what did I give you, Nana? He cleaned the reading room. Am I right? You see here. You see the sentence? My cursor is moving here. He cleaned the reading room. There I gave you only one object. Am I right?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Nana. Now I'm saying he cleaned his reading room. How many objects are there here?
Two.
Two. What are those?
His and reading room.
Very good. His and reading room.
Reading room.
Yes, whenever there are two, see there are two children at home, twins or two children at home, mom and dad give two names to that. Similarly, these two objects are given two names. First one, his is called indirect object and reading room is called direct objects. So whenever a verb is followed by two objects, we call that verb as ditransitive verbs. Now you may ask me a question. When there is one object, we can change the sentence from active voice to passive voice. When there are two objects, can be changed. Yes, you can change the sentence from passive or active voice to passive voice. You can start the sentence either with an indirect object or we can start with a direct object in passive voice. So whenever it is followed by one object or two objects also, you can change the sentence into passive voice. Okay, now and this passive voice sentence can begin with a direct object or with an indirect object. That part we have to see only in voice. Now, one more example. We sent her an invitation card. Now you see, what is the direct object, Nana, here?
Invitation card.
Very good. Invitation card is a direct object. What is the indirect object? Amma?
Her.
Her. Okay, so you will have direct object and it. So what is the verb here, Amma?
Sent.
Sent. That's the
Sent.
reason why I didn't make it bold. I want to ask you all. So what is the verb in the first sentence, Amma?
Cleaned.
Cleaned. Very good. Now anybody in the class, they have to say me. Sampath sir will give you a chocolate. Okay. So you tell me, cleaned and sent are finite and non-finite.
Fine, ma'am.
Very good. Who is that who told finite?
Sai Samhita, ma'am.
Very nice. Very nice. Now you tell me, it is a finite verb. Very good. Now you tell me, Sai, Samhita or anybody else in the class, whether it's a transitive verb or intransitive verb.
Transitive verb only, ma'am.
Very good. Who is that who told?
Sai Samhita, ma'am.
Very good. You are really understanding the point. Right. You understood the point. Cleaned and sent are transitive verbs. Whenever they are followed by an object only, they are called transitive verbs. If they are not followed by, see, verbs that need objects are known as transitive verbs. Okay. So whenever they are not followed by an object, they are not transitive verbs at all. Here we have two objects, a direct object and indirect object. So obviously, cleaned and sent become, what is that? Transitive verbs. Now, let us come to the other one, complex transitive verbs. Okay, so some transitive verbs require an object and complement after them. Again, see the same sentence I have taken, Nana. First, when I introduced transitive verbs, what sentence I took, the same sentence I'm going on. So what is the difference between that sentence, this sentence, and how do you, what is that name? What is the nomenclature you give for all these words in the sentence and how they can be changed from active voice to passive voice? So what is that which facilitates all this? So that's the reason why I told you all this. Okay. So now you see, Nana, the doctor visits the patients every day. We play football in the nearby stadium. We consider him a master. Okay. The doctor visits the patients every day. What is visits, Nana?
Verb.
Verb. Very good. What verb?
Verb, ma'am.
What verb?
Ma'am, finite.
What verb?
Singular.
Huh? What verb it is?
Finite.
Ma, your voice is not clear.
Ma'am, that's a finite verb.
Okay, finite verb. Another name?
Transitive verb.
Very good. Transitive verb. We play football in the nearby stadium. What is the verb there?
Play, ma'am.
Play, ma'am.
Very good.
Play.
Play. Do you agree that it is a transitive verb, Amma?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. We consider him a master. What is the verb, Amma?
Consider.
Very good.
Consider.
Now, first sentence. The doctor visits the patients every day. What is the patient?
Visits.
Visits verb, okay, over. The patients, what is it?
Object.
Ma'am,
Object, very good.
Object.
We play football. What is the object?
Football.
Football. Okay. We consider him a master. What is the object?
Master.
No.
Master.
Him. Right. Very good. Now, you tell me. The doctor visits the patients every day. Every day is generally what parts of speech it is? What parts of speech? I'm not talking about object and all this. What parts of speech it is? Every day. It talks about time. Am I right? Every day, time. Adverbial of time. Every time, every day. Am I right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So, whenever any object is followed by a preposition or an adverb, then it is called as a complement. What is it called, Nana? Tell me.
Compliment. Compliment.
You see the spelling of complement? See, suppose somebody, what is that? Participated in the class very actively. Then I give good, very nice. Like this I say. That is COMPLIMENT. That is called a compliment. Good compliments I give. Okay. Now here, compliment. Yes, the doctor visits the patients every day. This compliment talks about something more about visiting. So that is called as complement. That is called as an adverb or a preposition. Whenever an object is followed by an adverb or a preposition, we call it as, what is that? Complement. Okay. Whenever a transitive verb is followed by a complement, then we call that verb as complex transitive verb. What is that?
Complex transitive.
Yes. So we consider him a master. We are giving a compliment call to him as a master. So it is a compliment. Where are we playing football? In the nearby stadium. We play football. Where do you play? Yes, we play.
Nearby.
Yes, we talk about more about that action. So that is called in the nearby stadium. That is a preposition. And every day is an adverb. So whenever a verb is followed by, what is that? Adverb of time or adverb of, or a preposition, we call it as a complex transitive verb. Now, so now we came to know, friends, transitive verbs can be classified into, what is that? Monotransitive verbs, dry transitive verbs, and transitive verbs. And there are verbs, finite verbs can be classified. See, if I go back. Right. Finite verbs are of two kinds. What are those? Transitive verbs and what is that? Intransitive.
Intransitive verb.
Completed transitive verbs. Now we are going to what is that called as intransitive verbs. Okay. Verbs do not need objects after them are called, what is that? Intransitive verbs. Very simple to say, Nana. There is no object in a sentence for that verb. Then those verbs are called as intransitive verbs and they cannot be converted into passive voice. Could you understand my point? Whenever a verb facilitates, what is that? An object can become a subject and subject can become an object. That verb is called a transitive verb and that facilitates what is that? Active to passive and passive to vice versa, passive to active. And those verbs which are there in a sentence which do not facilitate this process of converting from active voice to passive voice or passive voice to active voice, they are called as, what is that? Intransitive verbs. They do not facilitate. Intransitive verb does not allow changing the sentence from active to passive and passive to active. Verbs that do not need objects after them are called intransitive. The water level in the tank is rising. So here we do not have a, what is that? Verb at all. The children have already slept peacefully. So these do not allow, what is that? Change. They do not have an object and they do not have, what is that? Object and they do not allow, what is that? Object cannot be converted into subject. So the verbs that do not need objects after them are called, what is that? Intransitive verbs.
Intransitive verb.
Yes, they do not have an object. Example, verbs that can be used transitively and intransitively. The meaning here is, depending upon the position of the object, depending on the position of the verb, position of the verb, we change them into what is that transitive and intransitive. We can change some words depending on the position of the verb. We call it as transitive and intransitive. You see here, look at the screen. We closed the door. Just now I gave you the same example. Closed is followed by the door, so it is called as transitive verb.
Transitive verb.
Yes, very good. The door closed. So here, what is that? It doesn't have an object, so we are calling closed as intransitive verb. They were boiling the water. The water is an object, so we call boiling as what is that? Transitive verb. The water was boiling. Yes, boiling was kept at the end of the sentence without an object, so we call it as intransitive verbs. So the position of the verb will tell you whether it is transitive verb or intransitive verb. See, they were boiling the water was boiling. Both sentences give the same meaning. Okay, but they were boiling the water facilitates the, what is that? What is an action called as active voice and passive voice. The water was boiling doesn't allow this passive voice, what is that phenomena at all. So the position of the verb determines, you can't say these, see all these verbs are transitive and all these verbs are intransitive. You cannot say. For that only I made this slide. A verb can be used transitively as well as intransitively. The position of the verb will determine whether it can be used transitively or whether it is a transitive verb or intransitive verb. In the sense, if it is followed by an object, we call it a transitive. It doesn't allow or it doesn't have an object, but it gives the same meaning, then we call it as intransitive verb. Now now all of you, let us look at this video also.
Your class and need us to understand what's mean by transitive, intransitive, finite verbs and everything. Thank you so much, ma'am. And guys, hope you have understood today's class. And if you have any doubts or queries based on today's class, you may raise your hand. I request any guide teacher to please reflect on today's session.
Shravani, she raised her hand.
You can
Yeah.
unmute, Nana. Anybody, you can unmute.
Please, Shravani, what is her doubt?
Yes, Ravani, would you like to ask anything? Yeah, 1 second, I would unmute.
Angela ma'am, Padma ma'am, Swapna ma'am, Amla ma'am, Saujanya ma'am. Please reflect and children from your side, Padma ma'am.
Ma'am,
Yeah,
wonderful
good morning,
session,
everyone.
madam.
Thank you.
Angela ma'am, continue.
Yeah, ma'am, you go on. Then afterwards I'll.
Ma'am, it's a wonderful session and children can easily understood, madam. Some disturbances occurring, but children followed, madam. Thank you very much, madam. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you.